Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about the new economic thinking, and I think it's something that we have all been crying for. Now, there's a report that says almost half of the world's wealth is now owned by just 1% of the population. And the wealth of the 1% richest people in the world amounts to 110 trillion, and that's 65 times the total wealth of the bottom half of the world's population. And the bottom half of the world's population owns the same as the richest 85 people in the world. We are talking about inequalities in the system, and the same applies to us right here in Ghana. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. But guess what? In our quest to get out of these doldrums, we keep doing the same things over and over, government in and government out, and miraculously, we are expecting new results. From where? I am yet to find out. With me today in studio are two very dynamic, fire-burning young men who are going to think differently in terms of economics. Do something differently so we get different results. My name is Nana Sakwao. This is PM Express. You don't want to move. Thank you very much for staying. And as I said in the intro, new economic thinking. Don't we need that? How many times haven't we heard leaders of our nation, people who real power telling us that this is a gorgeous bag economy, and unless we add value to whatever it is that we are sending out, we will never ever be rich. And as I speak to you now, I think we are even perfecting what Gorgeous Beg did. Are we ever going to get rich or turn a new leaf when we're still doing the same things over and over again? With me in the studio from my immediate left is Paul Frimpong, a chartered economist. He's not new to the show. My own brother. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you this year. But today he's brought with him his brother, who is Patrick Stevenson, who's a director for the Diasporan Relation for Young Professional Economist Network. Patrick, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Me, I'm a traditionalist, so I'll charge you ambantum. So, those who come late are fined a bottle of something. Yeah. But Paul, I will start with you. Just a brief Young Professional Economic Network. Briefly, what do you do before we even launch into?
Yeah. So the Young Professional Economics Network is a group of young professionals. The name sounds economists, but mostly we have other professionals. We have lawyers, we have accountants, we have architects, we have graphic designers, IT specialists. And we are charting a new course of what we call the new economic thinking. And we have chapters all over the world. We started from Ghana here. Now we are in about 7 countries in Africa. Wow. And then we are also in Canada, Scotland, Germany, the USA, and Russia as well. So what we are seeking to do is actually create a new community, and these are very optimistic young Africans.
Or all national?
Africans. Young Africans all over, because all the chapters we have all nationalities on the continent being part of the movement. We know that Africa is a young continent. 7 out of every 10 Africans you meet are below the age of 35. So what we are trying to do is that this is a demographic dividend that we need to leverage on to actually champion the development that we want in Africa. So these are people that have their own worldview. If you are growing up, post independence era, 1990, 1980s, late 1970s, you realize that things have actually changed about the period. So these are people who have their own worldview. If somebody is living outside Africa, the person has a worldview. When somebody is living on a continent, the person has a worldview. But we need to create a common platform where all these professionals, wherever they are, can come together, leverage on their optimism, looking at some of the positive changes seen on the continent, to actually create a new movement that are going to come up with new ideas that are going to transform the continent of Africa. So the transformation of Africa is at the core of whatever we are doing, and we want to influence economic policy decisions on the continent. So because politically we are good, but economically that's where we have the challenge. So what are the new ideas? So our new economic thinking is actually something which is multidisciplinary. So when we meet to share the ideas or come up with a new economic thinking, we are looking at getting perspective from all these professionals. That's going to make it a whole. Because you're looking at a system where a lot of factors are affecting the economic policies that we make, but we don't include those factors in those policies that we make. So definitely we're going to deviate from the result that we are anticipating. So how best can we get all these young professionals from all over the world? So we gather, we meet, we share ideas, and then we can influence policy on the continent.
Well, let's stay in the continent a bit. I mean, is your generation the one that's going to break down our imaginary borders so that we can trade amongst ourselves? Is it going to come from this group?
Yeah, indeed. As part of our strategy, so somebody says, hey, you need to come up with ideas and what next. So we have synergy at the core of whatever we are doing. So how best can you connect the young professional in Ghana to the young professional in Tunisia? Okay, because we look at the dynamics in terms of wherever they find themselves. Obviously, there are opportunities in Francophone West Africa that Anglophone young person can tap into. But how best are you connecting these two individuals to come up with something that they themselves can actually implement on the ground? So until we are able to create the environment where these people can meet and interact and then form the synergy to actually implement whatever we are going to come up with. We are not looking at coming with ideas and thinking that somebody else is going to implement it. No, we are looking at how we can create the synergies among ourselves, leverage on the individual skill set that we have to be able to actually do the work that we think is good for the continent.
You know what, I hope, I know that's not what we're discussing today, but I just hope the producers will bring you back on so we go into that aspect of the discussion. And but let me go to you, Patrick. What's wrong with the way we think now, economic-wise?
What's wrong with the way we think? I mean, well, you can only respond to that question if you look at the kind of economic policies that we have implemented. I mean, post-independence, and look at the actual results that we've been able to turn out in terms of lifting a lot of people out of poverty, for example. Yes, you see marginally poverty reduction in Africa, but as we speak today, more than 50% of the people you have in Africa live on less than $2 a day. Okay, that's not to say that it's not a situation that exists in other jurisdictions globally, but given that we struggled for political independence and now would have to deliver the economic independence, as it were, it would appear as though the leaders that we had after those post-independence periods have not been able to put right the strategies that we need to deliver that economic independence. And so, like I was saying earlier, if you look at the results that we actually have as against the current economic challenges that the continent is bedeviled with, you see that clearly there's been a lot of things that have gone wrong. Today we say agriculture, for example, is one of the backbones of the African economy. If I should use Ghana as a test case, we haven't really paid much attention to that. I mean, Africans are not trading amongst themselves. It's estimated that volumes of trade between West Africa as a sub-region against Europe, and if you look at what you have between West African countries, I mean, that's in excess of about 3 or 4 times what we trade individually with the Europeans. And all of these things are challenges that if we do not resolve, well, we are not going to be able to deliver the economic goods that we're supposed to be delivering to lift people out of poverty. And by the way, we have gotten to a point where it has become more than necessary that we design and develop economic solutions based on African problems. More often than not, we apply diagnoses or solutions to problems that have not been properly defined within the African context. And so that creates or renders these solutions ineffective, if I can call them so, because if we are supposed to be dealing with something like maternal health, which has serious economic implications, and you're building them on societal hypothetical situations that are not pertaining to Africa. Okay, if you look at traditional African women, they have peculiar needs which must feed directly into the kind of policy design that you're putting across that affects them economically. And today we're having programs in Ghana like the LEAP, MASLOC, and other interventions. Have these programs been designed based on the traditional African context and hypothetical situations? Because if you get that diagnosis wrong, well, then the solution is going to be wrong. And so some of these things we believe have resulted in ineffectiveness of the implementation of policy. And by the way, that's equally another challenge. I mean, diagnosing the problem is one, being able to implement the solution accurately so you deliver the results you're looking for is another. And we have equally failed consistently on that front as well. And so these are some of the challenges that come to bear. And we believe that, I mean, as a young and upcoming generation, the next 50 years belong to us. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know any current politician who wants to be 150 years. If you're in office now, it's most likely you're 50 plus. So the next 50 years, they're going to phase out, which is why it is much more important that we look at the solutions that they have gotten wrong, or the things they have gotten wrong, what they have gotten right, improve upon what has been gotten right, but most importantly, find new ways by which we can resolve this economic quagmire that the continent is confronted with today.
Paul, are we not in danger where the politicians in power today will lock us and trade and literally sell off all our future, that by the time you get there, it's all sold off? I mean, you'll be handed over a country which is probably 70% owned by somebody far, far away, and you have nothing to do with it. You take things like, if I were to give you the country today, you don't own the gold, you don't own the telecom space, you don't own that. And so with all your good ideas that you're bringing on board now, you don't even have any. I mean, don't we run that risk where, you know, these guys with the short-sightedness, you know, sell everything off before those with the long sight, you know, get hold of power?
Yeah, we do. Actually, we have a structural challenge here, looking at independent or post-colonial Africa, and the kind of leaders that we've actually had over the period. These are leaders that you see, they lack vision, they lack foresightedness, they are not proactive enough to actually know that, okay, so in Ghana we are 27 million approximately, and the next 10 years, you can imagine how many Ghanaians we are going to be, maybe in excess of 30 million. Look at the challenges we are facing now. Energy facing a huge challenge. So what is going to happen if we are 35, we are 40 million people? I mean, are we going to provide enough energy to sustain ourselves? We're 27 million, we are struggling, and it's worsening day in and day out. So what is going to happen in the next, 10 years or 20 years ahead of us? So our idea is that now we need to look at how best we can actually come on board. And our approach is very simple. We do not have to depend on the government that these people are the ones supposed to provide this or provide that. I mean, often than not, we say that they have to make the environment conducive so that we're able to start something, but we are not getting that environment. So we need to step up and do the things that we think are right for us. Now, looking at how most of the things will be owned by foreigners, which is quite critical, because most of the sectors that most of the managers of the economies are focusing on now are ones which are most of the time capital intensive, require mass scale, managerial scale, and financial. I mean, it has to be very, very deep before you can enter into those areas. And these are the areas that you see now most of the managers of the economies are actually focusing on.
Let me just interfere, because we just heard, this is a breaking news, that there's a rout in the Kumasi prisons, and we have Nuruddin, Joy FM's correspondent, to give us an update. Joy News correspondent, I beg your pardon. Nuruddin. Hello, Nuru.
Yeah.
I hear. Tell us what's happening there in Kumasi.
Well, the information we had here was that there was fire at one of the hall, Wall B, and then so the prison service personnel had to release the prisoners, the inmates, into the yard. And when that was done, suddenly something happened, and then the prisoner, the inmates started throwing stones, and then started throwing objects at the prison service personnel. And so, as I'm speaking now, we are having the fire service personnel here, we are having the police service personnel also here, and we are having the military here trying to calm down things. It's very serious here. As you can hear at the background, they are still throwing objects and some stones over one of the walls of the prison, and it is very serious. So the police commander, the DCOP, Kofi Boakye, is here. All the security personnel are here. It's very, very serious as I'm speaking. So they're trying to find a way of calming things, but the prisoners wouldn't, calm down. They are still throwing stone. From where I'm standing, I can see them throwing stone over the wall, throwing so many objects, and you could see them displaced, here.
But what could have triggered such anger? If there was fire and they were moved to safety, why are they so upset? Well,
the information I gathered earlier was that the prison service personnel wanted to release them, because then if the fire was serious, it could affected them. So that was the reason why they released them to the yard. And I am thinking that it could be because of the fire. There were fears that the fire could get to them, and that was how it resolved. That's why I'm thinking. But for now, I don't have any information, any reliable information that was exactly what caused. But we are trying. We will get the necessary information as to why these prisoners, these inmates, throwing stones and struggling with the prisoners. Now, the security personnel have been able to go inside, and I think the place is somehow calm. We cannot hear the gunshots now, because there was these warning shots and all that we cannot hear. But it's very serious, Nana.
You may not know this, but were they released to the yard, quick enough? Maybe they are upset because they were kept in the room a bit too long.
Nana, if I hear you, you're asking whether they were released to the yard.
Yeah, quick enough. I mean, when they sounded the alarm for the fire, were they evacuated quick enough, or are they upset that maybe they were still kept in there while the fire was raging or about to?
Nana, for now, we wouldn't be able to know until we get further information from the prison personnel. But we are told that they were released into the yard because of the nature of the fire. I asked one of them who told me that it was very serious. The fire was very serious, so they had to release them to the yard.
Okay. Well, Nuru, keep an eye, and if there's any update, if you let us know, we'll also alert viewers. But that's what's happening. There's a fire raging in the Kumasi prisons. The prisoners have been evacuated to the yard, but somehow something has triggered off, and they are not very happy. But as soon as we find out why, we will let you know. But I think I broke your flow there in terms of whatever will be left of Ghana by the time you come with your good intentions.
Yeah. The news coming from Kumasi is quite worrying, and I'm happy that they are trying to calm things down. Because if I don't know, maybe they want to get out, and it's an opportunity. If there's room, small window, they might want to leave, because when the walls of the prison I tell you, it's not encouraging at all. So maybe they are trying to
find out why
use
they
the
are
opportunity,
upset.
to actually. So like I was saying, so we are looking at a system where we have, fundamental challenges. Looking at where we started from after colonial rule, the structure we were supposed to put in place. So now we have managers of the economy trying to look at sectors that they think they will get more money, easily, in the easiest way. So, and these are most of the time the areas that are very capital intensive, require more equipment, technical knowledge, and what have you. And these are all things that have not yet developed to that level. So what normally we expect is that, okay, we are getting money from those which are capital intensive, require more technical skill. But what are the areas that majority of people, you can find them? Okay, that is the way you can grow them. That's the way you can transform their lives. But if you don't look at that area, no, it's not by force. Nobody is by default that maybe you have oil, so you want to depend on it, because the money from the oil sector is, you all know how huge it is. But what about the agriculture sector? What about the other sector that you think majority of Ghanaians are in there, or maybe majority of the African people are in there? So you strategically move the resources you are getting, the little money you are getting from the oil or whatever sector, to those sectors that are going to involve a lot of people. That's the area we are lacking. And most of the time, we are looking at a system where government time and time depend on foreign direct investment, which is not wrong, because I'm not anti-foreign direct investment crusader. But what I'm looking at is we have the momentum now. Now we look at around the world, we're looking at investment and returns. Africa is the number one. So if you are taking your money into Africa and you are getting, let's say, 10% or 12%, maybe when you take the European market, you are getting let's say 5% or 6%. So here we have economic leverage that we need to use to actually develop. So looking at a system where from 1990s coming up, we've seen positive growth recorded on the continent of Africa. We've seen political stability. We're looking at era in the 1970s where we saw about 35, 36 countries in conflict. Now we don't see that anymore, though. See some little challenges in DRC and Central African Republic here and there, but the number has actually reduced. So it means that you have a number of countries where these investors can actually take their monies to. So now you're looking at a system where you know that these people are going to bring their money because I'm now positioned to actually make their investment grow. So leverage on that to say that, okay, you are bringing your money here, that is fine, but for now, these are our priorities. These are the sectors we want to develop because these are the areas that we think we can get more for our people. In that way, when they come, they are not taking everything from us. We are actually getting what we want. That is the way that they can use to actually save the future for the young generation. They are not doing it though. We all see the challenge that we are facing. It all falls down to the fact that people come, I mean, by the end of the year, they repatriate all their profit and we left with nothing. Okay, so these are issues that we are trying to look at and say, no, this is where we are. I mean, going forward, you see government depending on, foreign direct foreign support to support their budget. And these are countries that also have their own challenges. So if you're depending on them to come and support your budget, to bring you money here and there, their taxpayers' money to come and support your budget. I mean, for the past 50, 60 years that we support you, what have you used the money for? Okay, so obviously, because they are partners, maybe when they support you with, let's say, $20 million, they have their companies coming in free of charge, which is going to get them like $100 million. So that one, they will give it to you free for you. But how best are you using that money to develop your people? That is the issue. So we're looking at a system where we have to make sure that we do not depend solely on some of the development assistance, but we look at how to, and if you don't want to depend on this development assistance where, I mean, you are always looking for foreign direct investment, it means that you have to develop your internal structures very well. You have to develop your own industries, that you will be paid tax or whatever means that you are getting resources from them to be able to sustain the economy. Exactly.
I'm going to take a break here. And when I come, one thing we're going to look at is the disparity between the haves and the have-nots and how wide it is. Is there any way we can close that gap, and how? Don't move. New economic thinking, and I'm talking to Patrick Stevenson and Paul Frimpong, and these are optimist young men with new thinking in economy, and we need to back them up because I think it's very important. But I'm going to put this question to Patrick. How do we close the gap between the haves and the have-nots? Because just like the statistics says worldwide, I know it's everywhere, but you see, if let's say I was in London and my next door neighbor drove 10 Rolls Royces, I really didn't care because I had all my basics. The lights are also on in my house. I could walk into any showroom and credit a car if I want to. Maybe not necessarily a Rolls Royce, but I could buy a decent Golf, which is nice enough. I could send my children to school, buy them a bottle of milk, and therefore I'm filled up. So if my next door neighbor is even eating a cow, I don't care because, come on, neighbor, you see. But the issue comes when, you know, one has absolute zero, living on scraps, and the other is burning food, excess food. And that's what we have here. It's not necessarily that everybody wants to be rich, but just that, I mean, LEAP is what? It's 48 cedis every 2 months. I mean, I don't know how they live on that. You know, 48 cedis every 2 months. That's what you get. And you're supposed to say thank you because Abana Yade, they brought me money. So how do we close this gap?
So you're clearly spot on a couple of things. Clearly, it's not just an African phenomenon, but for a rising continent, it's of much concern because now everybody's beginning to look at Africa. We have a spotlight on us, and so we should be the people that figure it out. I mean, other jurisdictions have been able to figure it out. China, for example, has been able to pull close to 100 million people out of abject poverty. I mean, you're talking people that lived on less than $2 a day. I mean, over the past 30 years, they've been able to drag 100 million of them out of that trap. So some people have done it elsewhere in other jurisdictions. Have we been able to do it? We have not been able to do it. It is one thing, okay, because before you begin thinking about how to bridge the gap, somebody has got to grow the wealth. So when you say that if you're, for example, in the UK and your next door neighbor can afford a Rolls Royce and you can afford, well, some Volkswagen Golf, it is because it has been created already. And we are finding ways by which we distribute it. I mean, I always use the American society as one of the most solid societies for bridging inequality gap. People disagree. But you have two mainstream political parties, okay? You have Republicans and Democrats. The Republicans believe in free capital. They believe in private enterprises doing real stuff to create wealth. So they're in office for, say, 8 years. They do that. So the lower taxes for corporations are doing real stuff. They have stability of interest rates, which is close to zero. People can borrow and do real business. So they create wealth. Power changes. Democrats come into power. They're liberal in thinking. They say, you know what, there are too many people that are living in abject poverty. So let's take from you, the rich, and distribute to the poor. Okay, so they now increase things like taxes on corporations. They create all these social interventions. I mean, and by the way, they are one of the biggest social intervention mechanisms globally. I mean, you have about 35 million people who are living on, say, food stamps, for example. And these are things that have been provided by the state. And that's not your $48, 48 cedis per month. That's not that kind of stuff. They're providing real stuff for these people, okay? And so that is a society that has designed over time a mechanism that is ensuring that they breach that gap. They haven't gotten it perfect, which means there's no one-size shoe that fits this scenario, which would mean that if we as Africans cannot understand the genesis of our problem, the causal factors of our problem, then we might be getting the diagnosis wrong. Take most of the country. I mean, before we came on, you were even making reference to some of the governments that we've had. For example, take Ghana as a test case. 3 different or 4 different governments that we've had at least over the past 20 years, and we still find ourselves over. So cumulatively, you don't see them being able to do anything credible. Bridging the inequality gap, to respond more specifically to the question, is not about, I mean, in our case, I don't see you taking from the rich and giving to the poor to be the solution. LEAP is one of those, where we think we have to tax people, get money put in a consolidated fund, and hand them out. You're teaching, you're giving the person the fish, you're not teaching them to fish. That person lives in a community that is extremely agrarian. There's no road that transports the person's product to the farm, to the market for the person to exchange that and get sustainable economic livelihood. I mean, how long are you going to be running LEAP? How long are you going to be running any of these social interventionist programs? It's not sustainable. And that is where the thinking should be geared towards. I think we live in a part of the world where anytime we have talked about bridging the gap between the rich and the poor, we quickly focus on taking from the rich and handing it over to the poor. That's not sustainable. That's not going to deliver the goods we're looking for. And so ensuring that we have the right infrastructure developmental projects you have in the rural areas, for example. Today, if you move into some very remote areas that you might ordinarily want to move to, you can't have access to basic things that helps you do business. As I speak to you today, if a railway line is constructed right from Accra to places like Tamale, you will see the volume of decongestion that will get in Accra. You see the number of businesses that will spring across that entire road. Look at when you get to places like Nsawam, see what is happening there. I mean, most of these business communities that you find across most of these major infrastructure developments that ensure movement of people and goods have added value to these local economies. So you don't have to get government going into that jurisdiction and handing money to people. It doesn't work that way because it's not sustainable. And so you need to begin to think about how to develop the local economies. I mean, during the lecture series, some statistics that will go very staggering. I mean, if you have 57% of the people of this country, the active labor force, being in agriculture, okay? And that sector produces, in 2011, less than 1% of the total output of this country, okay? And we assume that what you produce is what you actually earn, because if you don't produce anything, you don't sell, so you don't earn income. If 57% of the working population are growing less than 1% of output, then naturally, by the very structure and fundamentals of the economy, those people are poor, even before we start looking into the numbers. So how do you add value? Okay, today we are talking about the discovery of oil in commercial quantities. What is the value addition to the local economy? We have fixed repatriation flows, we have fixed policies that are not adding value to the local economy. Everything appears to be flying out. The diagnosis of problems like that is not about taking from the rich and giving to the poor. It's not about taking from the corporation and handing over to the people in the Western region. No, they are agrarian economies, okay? So how do we add value to these economies? If it is retail and trade, how do we add value? Consistently, we have seen that either the governments implement some mechanisms that either end up protecting inefficiencies that we have within the system, and so that compounds and confounds the problem. We think that thinking must change. If we do not do that, then consistently, like Paul rightly mentions, well, we'll be looking to some people to be helping us support ourselves, and that is not going to be sustainable over the long run. Today, another type of inequality that's been discussed extensively as well is what you call generational inequality. So that we discovered oil in commercial quantities. The argument is that we should be able to equitably distribute that between ourselves and the generations unborn. Problem is, how do you do that equitably. There could be so many solutions. This is a beautiful thing about economics. You can have different solutions to a problem, but one of those solutions is more sane, if I can call it, for the lack of a better word. So we decided that, okay, let's take some money, keep it in what you call a heritage fund, okay? And you're investing that and getting returns of 5%. And you say you're keeping that for the unborn generation. This is where that logic fails. So you have a young man today who is not in school, who does not have good health care, okay? That person you're saving the money for to come and use for what in the future? Because that person is not going to be able to transform himself even when you're given that resource. There are lots of examples like that. And so we think some of these diagnoses, which we expect to equitably distribute wealth in society, might not necessarily be the way to go. Invest in education. Get that person the quality education they need. If you go to places like Agona Kunya, the person doesn't have a school, you say you're storing wealth for them for the future. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Put up a school there, quality school, by the way, not what we see in the public sector today, where public sector officials are taking their kids to private institutions and patronizing private healthcare. That's not what I'm talking about. Get the quality education, transform that human being, and they will be able to innovatively add value to the economy. Today, if you look at the economy, you clearly mentioned at the beginning of the program that we have a Guggisberg economy. It hasn't changed. I mean, I've studied the structure of the economy from 1970. Nothing has changed. We have just added telecoms. We have expanded telecoms a little bit. We have increased the number of financial services and financial institutions a little bit. Now we have oil and gas and commercial quantities. But the structure hasn't changed. And what you consistently see is that agriculture seems to be going down, which employs a lot of people in its contribution to output. And then you see increases in things like services. And so the more people get educated, the more innovative they become about finding economic solutions to the problems that we have. And I think that is the way to go, rather than this cash handouts, because I mean, the cash handouts clearly haven't delivered the goods. I mean, how long are you going to be giving some woman in some market, how long are you going to be giving her money, and how sustainable is that? I mean, the things he has, he's even importing them, so he's exposed to all kinds of, I mean, the entire economy is exposed to all kinds of international trade risks and forex risks that we have. And so some of these challenges, I think, if we begin to look at them from the Ghanaian or from the African perspective, we might have better diagnosis. I mean, we agree that in some jurisdictions, some solutions might have worked. I mean, if you take Norway, this generational inequality I'm talking about, they went the way of the Heritage Fund. But they fixed education, they fixed healthcare.
Yeah.
So today you have people from Africa patronizing education and healthcare from most of the Nordic countries. But they had to fix those social interventions. They had to fix them. You don't fix them, you're storing wealth. What are you storing for? That person's going to pick up arms and kill you if you don't fix them.
Which is very true. And Fadama is brewing seriously. And you see, Patrick just made me sad, right? Because everything that Patrick has said, I can bet my bottom dollar if I went to the Flagstaff house today, they'll take all the boxes and say, yes, we know it. But the danger, you see, what the danger is, knowing what is right and not being able to do it. I mean, if you didn't know, you know, I would say at least he's doing his best. He doesn't know. But for a nation to sit down and know the solutions to a problem, and yet still sit down and don't move it. Because, you see, we are here talking about an economy, and then you're wondering, how are we going to run the economy with no lifeline, i.e. energy? You know, how do you run an economy without energy? And, you know, I don't believe that any government or any minister or any worthy source did not know that you can't talk about industrialization and all this big English without energy.
Exactly.
But yet still, you know, we are here rationing power and talking about industrialization and all. I love English because you can just use it freely. You know, that's the good thing about, you know, industrialization, the growth, it's better and this and that and this. I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, after listening to Patrick's speech, we don't have energy. The differences in schools, if you are able to go to the Dedaba schools, you're better off. If you're not lucky, then you're doomed, you know. So in today's Ghana, you can look at a child and 90% predict that, as this child is doomed. You can 90% predict. Just go to a village, look at a child and say, Uncle baby, and you'll be 90% right, unless some lottery comes and he's able to escape the net.
No, it's true. It's true.
But, you know, so how can in 20, you know, I keep saying the 21st century is 15 years old. So where do we go from here? You are the young ones.
Yeah, I think everything economics and growth and what have you, it's all about transforming the lives of the people. Talk about infrastructure, talk about education, talk about health, energy, all the numbers, you can spew it out, but I mean, what is the end result? The end result we are trying to look at is how best you can transform the lives of the people. So you have a system where we are looking at energy being very critical. It's one of the topmost priorities in terms of infrastructure development in a developing economy like Ghana. Very, very critical. And you failed woefully on that. And I mean, some people are asking whether there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think there's, rather, I mean, I don't know how to put it, but the case is that we need to look at how best you can actually translate all the good stuff we've been seeing happening on the sub-Saharan African continent into real-time improvement in the lives of the people. Okay, so Patrick was trying to look at how, I mean, improvement of education, the healthcare system, to empower people to actually create their own wealth, because if you don't create a world, you don't think about inequality, you don't think about anything. So how are we able to empower the people to create the world that they want, because that is a sustainable way of developing the people. So you don't pick from one end and give it to the other end. That one, you're creating a whole challenge in there. So first, you are going to demotivate those who are actually trying to make it, because the moment you get to the top, you're going to pick from you and then give to somebody down there. So that is going to create demotivation on that side. And then also, you're not going to actually motivate those down there to actually climb up, I mean, to do their bit to actually sustain themselves. But that's the issue. So this whole issue about inequality, this whole issue about energy, I mean, supporting your industries, because you know most of your industries are small and medium enterprise. So if there's no energy, there's no power. I mean, you are now look at Ghana, we are looking at 12 hours light and 24 you are off. So in the whole 24 hours, nobody's going to work or what. I mean, these are all issues that we need to look at. But what we are trying to say is that from time to time, we know that these were failed and they're still failing, and the possibility that you're going to fail, I mean, going forward as well. So
don't be a prophet of doom.
Okay, so what we're trying to look at is that, no, we have to, I mean, pick up, I mean, the space and actually do something on our own. So that is why we are creating this platform as the Young Professional Economists. That's why we are creating this movement. These are all fantastic young Africans. Like I said, by saying, when you are part of the 21st century, I mean, people, I mean, you're looking at a time where, I mean, I'm growing up, I never witnessed 1983, hunger in Ghana. I never saw disease, a lot of diseases, I mean, in Ghana, where people were dying. I mean, so obviously my view about how things can happen, I mean, because I've seen some things improve, because if I read the history, it showed me that people were very hungry in 1983, and there were diseases in Ghana, maternal death, and what have you. Now the story have changed. So actually, my view about what is going to happen in the next 10, 20 years should be positive in a way. But when it gets to that point where people are discouraged going forward, that, oh, as a young person, I don't have a future, because even now, a crisis.
Let me come in. You see, when you say people are discouraged, I mean, I'm a pessimist, and everybody sometimes... You see, and I'm not a pessimist. I'm not saying that we are a failed state or we don't have a chance. I'm saying that we haven't started the will to progress.
I agree.
You know, it's not that there's no opportunities there. I think that we have more than enough, but we haven't started doing anything towards success. And so I'm not a pessimist, and that's why I'm a pessimist.
So there are two things. When it comes to the management of an economy, you have sound economic management, you have political expediency. The politician lives from one election to the other. Bottom line.
Case closed.
And so the incentive to do or pursue the right economic strategy that has a long-term perspective, which is what is extremely important in economics. I mean, it's okay to think short-term, but look at the attending disadvantages when you begin to think short-term. But the politician, like I said, living from one election to the other, is always constricted to think within the short term.
Let me come in, staying on the same point. Is it not because as citizens or as followers or politicians, we become so lazy and also short-sightedness and instant gratification? We want ours now, you know. Give me mine now. Don't come and tell me you're going to bring a bridge later. Just give me my bottle of oil today and forget about the bridge. I mean, we who are following these politicians.
So it comes back to the point of leadership. Nkrumah in 1957 had to get political leadership. He got it. He could have taken a shorter cut, didn't he? But he didn't. He built Akosombo. We have reaped the benefits of Akosombo. He built Tema motorway. Today, that motorway has been able to pay for itself 50 times the value that was invested in there, okay? At the time he built Akosombo, we had excess capacity for the generation of energy in this country. Today we don't. And so that's why I think we should situate the debate. So the people will want something, okay, but it is you as a leader who's supposed to develop a clear roadmap by which to transform the lives of the people. But if you begin to live from one election to the other, well, then the people begin to think within that perspective as well. Yep. If you come and every 4 years you come and hand out some bags of rice so people elect you in office. I mean, I agree, I share your sentiments that sometimes the challenges that bedevils an economy is a reflection of the kind of people that live within that economic society, which is why we have lots of challenges in Africa, because either the people are extremely destitute, and when you're destitute, you hardly participate in economic governance and economic management, because, I mean, look at a rich person and a poor person. Generally, the poor person has the tendency to be a little submissive. I mean, I agree there are some people who are outliers at some point, but there's somebody who is generally going to be submissive, and so quotes the dictates of what the political leadership is going to be. Yeah. Which is why growing of a middle class is extremely important in 21st century for the transformation of every economic society, because they are the people that can ask the right questions about any kind of system of governance that delivers results. But if you have a system that the middle class is extremely constricted, like we've had in Africa for the past year, middle class of about 400 million. For people who are 1.2 billion in Africa.
No, 2 billion.
I mean, that doesn't cut it, because then consistently you find political expediency being pursued at the expense of sound economic management, and that doesn't help. If you open up the debate about the management of an economy of, say, the US, or even of the European Union, the people that participate in the debate are people that own businesses and expect you, the politician, to do what is right. I agree they equally have their challenges, but on the whole, they appear to be better compared to what we have in Africa. I mean, look at some of the dictatorial leaders that we have who don't even open up any kind of discussion for people to participate in anyway. And so these are challenges that we must learn to break these barriers. If we do not, we're not going to end up transforming Africa like we're looking for.
You see, let me say with you, how do we make sure that we get, a leg in there? Because if I keep saying that the youth should write their own manual, because the ones that we're using today is not even worth the paper it's written on. When I say the manual, our style of politics, our constitution, all those things have to be burnt and rewritten in a Ghanaian way. Our laws and everything should be focused, right? However, by the time sound-minded youth like you get there, you're now 50 or 48 and ready to take over, these guys now would have caused such a mess. I don't know how it would be reversed. How do we do to make sure we get a foot in there and make sure they don't damage too much? So when they are ready to check out, there's something left to grow from.
So there are two things on that front. First of all, you would have to participate in the discussion as it is today. There's nothing like future leaders. I mean, I disband the notion of future leaders. There's everything silly, quote unquote, about that notion that we're future leaders. You're future leaders for what? For an economy that is going to be mismanaged and misrun by somebody else? Leadership is today, and it's the cause. Everything that happens with it is just an effect or reflection of what decisions you made today. And so it is time you take part in the discussions today, which means that you would have to get the right information to be able to advocate for certain policy changes. Today, the entire political discussion in economic management is owned by the politician. They dictate whatever should be done. That narrative must change, and it is you, the youth. We're talking about a population, or 60% of the population in Africa today are entirely youthful. Okay, the politician, like I said, living from one vote to the other, will pay attention to you when it knows you begin asking the right questions about the kind of policies they implement. What it will mean, which brings us to my second question, the second concern, is that you would have to have the right information to be able to take part in that discussion. Don't allow the politician to tell you, I've built 20 roads. I mean, I was just looking at some reports today. I'm told we built, what, in 3 years, between 2010 and 2013, 21,000 infrastructure projects in this country. 21,000 infrastructure projects? That is, the construction here circles one. And I'm talking 21,000. That alone can transform an entire country. So what I'm saying is that do not allow the debate to be controlled that way. And the only way you can come to the table with sound reasoning is when you yourself have got the right information based on the right hypothetical situations that we have in Africa. You have the right diagnosis, and the politician has no other way than to look your way.
I'm going to take a break here, and when I come back, my boys are going to tell, especially the youth listening, what you have to do like before tomorrow morning. Stay tuned. new economic thinking. And I hope that, I know it's late, but I hope I have quite a youthful viewers out there listening and getting inspired as to starting now, because it's been my worry. But, you know, I think I've been advised. I mean, what are you talking about, the future? Where's the future if you don't start now? So if you're out there listening, Paul, I'm sure you need to rally out like-minded youth, where to find you, how to join this squad, and, you know, what to bring on board to own the continent once and for all.
Exactly. So, like I started by saying and introducing about the Young Professional Economists Network, we are creating the platform from all young Africans around the world to actually come together and to share ideas, come up with new ideas that can actually transform the continent. So we've been practicing some economic ideas for the past 60 years. We're not getting the result that we desire. So what is the way out? What is the new way? And we want all young Africans, wherever they are, if you're in Ghana, you can just go to our website, www.ypenetwork.org. To be
Say it again and slowly, please.
Okay, www.ypenetwork.org. That is Young Professional Economists Network.org. To sign up online and be part of the network. Last Thursday, we had a very great event, New Economic Thinking Lecture on Bridging the Income Inequality Gap, as we are discussing here today. So the way forward is that we need to involve the young people. We need to come together as young people. We need to share ideas, not just share ideas, form the synergies and actually implement those ideas that are going to come up with whatever discussion that we are going to have. And that is the way forward. That is the way we can transform the African continent.
You see, one thing that I find is how politically drunk that, you know, the society has also become. Anytime I do a show on radio, you have people just waiting and waiting to see, well, is it going to be NPP show? Is it going to be an NDC show? What is he going to say? So every week you are something else depending on what you said. Very few people can take things based on their merit. And at every given time in our governance, if you have common sense, you are opposed government. There's no way any sane person today can say, oh, Dunso is not right. They know NPP. Equally, if Kufuor had been the president and this situation had come and you saw it, oh, no NDC. You know, that's what. So how do you form this group and then think, because anything that's wrong today means you are opposed to government. So how do you form this group and let people know that, no, we're just dealing with the issues and, you know, so be it, what's behind it? How do you do that?
Well, so a couple of things. I think to begin, we have to start dispelling the notion that anything sound reasoning means you are anti-government. Yeah. Indeed, historically, it's been proven that the people that have driven societal change have always been people that are in the minority. The majority does not have the incentive too, because you're the guy in government. You might not have all the data sets and all the variables at your disposal to be able to diagnose a problem. But there could be that person who's sitting in his office, sitting behind a desk, and has been monitoring the phenomenon for a very long time. And so these are the people that change the way the society is going. And so to the youth, the only way to get out of this is to begin to realize, I mean, we have to come to that personal realization that, look, the future belongs to us, and it cannot be dictated by the current political class. I agree, the political divide we have in this country is crazy, to the extent that we can't have a sound national economic discourse, or any discourse for that matter, without necessarily roping in somebody belonging to a particular political party or the other. In any case, we've had a cumulative effect, at least over the past close to 30 years, of both major political parties. And why are we? Today we're having power being switched off and on anyhow. And so what it means, therefore, is that as a youthful individual, it behoves on you to begin to look for alternative solutions, not what has been dictated by the political party. Indeed, if you look at all the political parties and what they promise to provide, they're not different in many ways if you review them. The point is that there are hard economic realities that we are confronted with, which is why a movement like what we're doing is extremely important. The interesting thing, though, is that historically we have treated economics as a dismal science. So it's only reserved for some professors, some gray-headed individuals who build models and they test the models and the models are approved and they shelve them. That age is gone, because all those solutions that we have on the shelves of ESL, Economics Department of University of Ghana, KNUS, and all of those places have not delivered the goods. That's the reality of the situation. And we have gotten to a point where we have to move that discussion and make that discussion real. And the only way you do that is to involve the political scientist, because economics has to interface at some point, the sociologist, because it interfaces at some point. Even the scientist, that medical doctor who's sitting at Kolebu and saving lives, today power has been switched on and off. The effect is that, yes, somebody's going to lose blood, some patient is going to die. And so that debate must be a collection of individuals from various disciplines, various backgrounds. This is the only way we can get the sound economic diagnosis that we are looking for, and not necessarily belonging to any specific political party. And so if you're youthful, the only thing you can begin thinking about are solutions that deliver the public goods that we're looking for. And the only way to do that is to begin asking the right questions and having the right information to
Patrick, thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much. That's been very insightful. Like I'm saying, I hope my producers bring these boys back, because there are so much things that we need. I mean, we can even bring the whole energy thing and see what the youth think and get their ideas too from it. Today is Wednesday, so on Thursdays, those who follow me on Joy FM, that's my opinion between 2 and 3. Tomorrow, my topic is let there be light. But for what do we need the light for? And I'm sure when I said everybody's going to kick me and think, what do you mean, what do we need the light for? But tune in tomorrow between 2 and 3 p.m. And I'm saying, let there be light, but what do we need the light for? Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.